I want to check in with another one of our analysts, someone who knew Joe Paterno quite well, who has been an observer of this league for many years, as both an assistant coach as a head coach as well, Glen Mason. Glen joins us now on the phone. And your reaction, Mace, first of all, to the severity of the penalties.
Boy, as I listened to those penalties coming down, I thought from Penn State perspective, as far as trying to be competitive in the future, it might have been better if they would have got the death penalty. I've never, in my college coaching career, I've never seen penalties, with the exception of SMU and the death penalty, anything even close to this. And, when you think about the impact that it's going to have on the program with the players that have the ability to leave immediately, and you would have to think that, especially the young players, when you talk about 4 years of bowl ban, that a lot of those guys will be thinking about going other places. The older players that are there, they're end of their career, and they got their friends there, and I would assume that most of those guys will stick it out. But once you get attrition like that, and your numbers get down, and then you get the double whammy of only 15 initial scholarships, it becomes very, very difficult and short-term impossible to get your numbers up. And the game of football is a number game. And if people are operating with 85 players on scholarship and you might only have 60, you got a big problem.
Again, their max starting in 2014 will be 65, so they're going to need to start depleting the roster. Now, whether or not the roster will deplete on its own, as you mentioned, Mace, with the ability of players to transfer without any type of penalty, that remains to be seen. What's the challenge from a coaching point of view? You have been at the front of that room. I was talking about this with Coach DiNardo earlier. What does Bill OBrien need to say? What's his message to these guys?
Well, obviously, Bill has not been a head coach very long. He's not been at Penn State very long. I think his number one challenge, he's got to convince those players that he's in there for the long haul. There'll be a lot of speculation. Will Bill OBrien jump ship? This is not his problem, whatever. And I think he's got to go in there and say, hey, fellas, it is what it is. Football teaches you many great lessons, one of which is when you get knocked down, you get up and you go again. Well, we've been knocked down, and I would emphasize the we part. We've been knocked down, but that's okay. We're going to get back up. We're going to hang tough. We're going to be the best football team, the most competitive football team. We're going to do things right, and we are going to continue to recruit, and we're going to get players that want to come here to Penn State. Now, when he goes home and he sits down with his wife, he might be thinking out loud to her, what did I get myself into? When all else fails, I always say you got to lie to yourself. He's got to say, hey, I got a great job. I got a great opportunity. With every challenge, there is an opportunity, and I have an opportunity to right the ship here and make something great. There's a saying, Jerry, in football, it's always tough, if not impossible, to follow a legend. Well, because of all these activities, that legend, Joe Paterno, it's going to be a lot easier to follow in his footsteps now and really make a great name for himself, and I wish him all the best luck.
Mace, you've taken over some down programs. Be interested in the lowest number of scholarships you had at any one time in your coaching career and how that changed your day-to-day operation.
Jerry, that's a great question. I thought about that because when I went to Kansas back in 1988, we only had 51 scholarship players, and in the old Big 8 conference, and you were back there at that time. There were some awful good football teams in that league then, and the scholarship limits were higher. But the two programs, Kansas and Iowa State, under Jim Walden, out of no fault of our own, it wasn't probation, and those type of things. It was just a lot of coaching changes that were down in numbers. And the problem was you couldn't build the numbers back up, and at the same time, you were trying to set certain standards in your program, and as in all coaching changes, a lot of times players want to leave, and you find yourself with the dilemma well, do I bend my principles on how I think you build a program and make it easier so that the players don't leave, or do I set the tone on what I think has to be done to turn this program around, and we're going to face further attrition? And to be honest with you, there was a lot of dark moments back then. I thought, we're getting better, but we're not going to get better fast enough before the posse gets me. And I used to have long conversations with Jim Walden, and he thought the same thing. But that was the most unusual situation. And the byproduct, it still goes back to the student athletes, Jerry. And I remember I recruited a young man out of Oklahoma as an offensive center, and he came in as a true freshman. And in time would have been a good player. And all of a sudden, because of injuries, I called him in one day, and I said, I'm going to move you from center to middle guard. He said, Coach, I've never played defense before. I said, I just got a feeling that you'll be an awful good defensive player. He said, whatever you think, Coach. And 3 days later, I started him against the University of Nebraska at middle guard because I didn't have a choice. And the sad thing about that, after the season was over, he quit football because he wasn't ready to play at that level, at that competition. And be honest with you, I made a mistake. I didn't have a choice, but I made a mistake because the player should have came first. I should not have put him in that situation that he was not ready to compete at.
These are all going to be decisions of the type that Bill OBrien is going to have to make, and maybe some difficult ones going forward. Appreciate your insight as we have all weekend. Thanks a lot, Glenn, and we will obviously talk to you soon.